Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have a quorum, barely, but that means we can conduct business. That means we all have to vote together on issues. If anyone has an issue with anything, please speak up prior to the vote so we can decide how we're going to handle it. First is the acceptance of the March 9th, 2022 minutes as written and or amended. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Public hearings, A020037, Michael Norrie, the applicant requests adjournment to July 27th, 2022. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in this application?
Motion to adjourn to July 27, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A020070, Peter E. Castro and Joanne DeMaria.
We do have affidavits of posting and mailing in compliance with the town code, and the board does have jurisdiction to open the hearing.
Thank you. Hello, Daphne, you may present the application. Actually, why don't you sit here?
Hello, Daphne Vaughn, Surfside Environmental Planning for Castro de Maria. Not a lot of space here. Okay, so, I don't like this. I have a couple of things that Marty stamped in for me, so before I begin, I'm just going to pass those out. There's some aerial photographs, historical aerials. We have some pre-purchase photos of the property. This is some trustee permits and the photos that go with that. And then this is an affidavit that goes with the pre-existing certificate of occupancy
I'm
on the property. So there's probably going to be some extras.
I'm trying to get rid of papers past that time. That's why I can give it to you here to collect them.
Okay. So the subject property received a conditional approval from this board in January 2021 for the installation of a 16 by 36 swimming pool with associated decking or a patio to be located 30.8 feet landward of a functional bulkhead, as well as installation of pool equipment, a pool dry well, and a pool enclosure fence. The resolution also gave approval to install an untreated wood or other non-toxic wood alternative retaining wall landward of the required naturally vegetated non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer for the project that was to be 24 feet landward of the bulkhead. This property is in Shinnecock Shores on Marlin Road. So the approval also required relocation of an existing shed and associated wood ramp to a location landward of that buffer zone. So my office submitted a modification of a conditional approval application on January 11th of this year, as the conditions of the resolution were not completed as of that date. So my clients were working with another consultant prior to me coming in, and they were not made aware of the requirement to relocate the shed. So they had no consideration of that during the times of the public hearing last January and then the subsequent resolution. So they were not in agreement with that, and their consultant agreed with it at that time. So the conditional approval went through, and they didn't do anything further because they didn't want to relocate the shed. So we are basically here to discuss that. We have modified the project to still request a swimming pool, but we've modified the pool to be from 16 by 36 to a reduction to 12 by 30, with a proposed 541 square foot masonry patio located on two sides of the proposed pool. So both the pool and the patio would be located 35 feet from the bulkhead instead of 30.8 feet that was originally granted. So the retaining wall that was replaced with a higher masonry wall was basically approved within the resolution. It was not specified. But they didn't have a permit to actually do it. They did the work. So we're here to legalize that replacement that was specified as allowable in that conditional approval. In addition to that retaining wall, they also constructed a masonry planter that's 5 by 50 on the seaward side of the retaining wall. And that's located 20 feet from the bulkhead. So we're seeking to legalize that as well. There's 190 linear feet of pool enclosure fencing that's proposed along the top of the retaining wall that would go around the property lines into the house to act as a pool enclosure fence. And that's located 27.5 feet to the bulkhead, and then we're proposing the standard pool equipment and a pool dry well, both greater than 50 feet landward of the bulkhead. So as I had mentioned in the beginning of my discussion, we're also seeking to legalize the removal of a previously existing 8-foot by 16.3-foot storage shed that was there at 8 feet from the bulkhead, that was constructed prior to the inception of zoning of October 14th, 1957, and to legalize its replacement with a smaller shed that's 8 by 14.3 feet in that same location, 8 feet landward of the bulkhead. So they wish to maintain it in that present location with a small surrounding maintenance area, which is shown on the survey that I don't know if you have in front of you, that we submitted with our application.
I'm seeing a framed shed, 8 feet by 14.3 feet.
Yes,
Is that the existing one, or is that the one to replace the existing one?
that's the one that was replacing the existing, okay, so the property has a pre-existing certificate of occupancy that I did submit with my application for the residents and a shed, and that shed was 8 feet by 16.3 feet. When they purchased the property in 2019, I believe. I didn't get to that in my notes yet. Yeah, October of 2019 is when they purchased the property. The house and the shed were in disrepair. It's my understanding that there were raccoons living in the shed. It was full of pests. It was dilapidated. That's why I submitted some of these items that are before you. So in order to clean up the shed, they replaced it with a smaller shed in the same location. I'm not sure of the timeline of that, if that was done prior to the submission of the initial application by the other consultant. I think it was, yes?
The summer before.
Yes, okay. So that shed was there when they submitted their original application.
So you're stating that the shed is grandfathered in?
So we're stating that the shed had a pre-existing CO. They, to repair the shed, replaced it with something smaller than what was existing.
Do we have
In-
those documents?
Yes, the pre-existing CO is in the file with my original submission. That affidavit that I just submitted, I found, it's from 1980. That was submitted with the pre-existing certificate of occupancy application. by Robert Boy and Violet Boy, who were the owners of the property at that, in 1980, I believe. And that basically says that they, wait a second, where am I? That the improvements were completed before October 14th, 1957, and that they are the one-family dwelling, dock, bulkhead, and an accessory shed. And the survey that goes along with that is by Dolliver Land Surveying, dated April 14th, 1967. And on the back of this affidavit that I submitted, there's comments from the building inspector at that time, that it was inspected November 20th, 1980, and they found a one-story, one-family frame house with an outdoor shower and a detached storage shed. So this is what the town relied upon to issue that pre-existing certificate of occupancy in 1980. I also am submitting to you these historical aerials, this packet, that show they're not, the 1976 aerial is not wonderful, but you can see that the shed is there in that location. And then I skipped to 2018. It's the same shed, 2020, prior to the change, and then 2021, you see the new shed that is smaller in that same location. They did replace the bulkhead with a town trustee permit. The trustee permit I did submit to you with a certificate of compliance to show that it was completed in compliance with the trustee requirements. The trustee permit also had photos. You can kind of see the shed. I circled them in the package that I gave to you to show the shed that was replaced. And then Ms. Di Maria, who is here with me this evening, sent me these two photos that were from the real estate pre-purchase, showing the back of the house with the retaining wall that was there. It was a small block wall and the shed. It doesn't, it's an old shed that may or may not.
So the bulkhead has received a CFC from the trustees?
Yes. So they had applied for a permit that was granted in July of 2021, and they received a certificate of compliance in April of 2021.
And
April 6th,
has the-
2021.
Has the covenant,
2020, I think we had.
Yeah.
has a covenant been filed for the buffer?
No.
Is
No,
the
nothing.
buffer-
So what happened was they received the conditional approval, and then the consultant went back to them and told them that they had to relocate the shed. They were not amenable to relocating the shed, so they weren't amenable to the buffer that went along with it, because the buffer was supposed to be 24 feet across the whole property. So what we have done here is we've shrunk the pool, which would typically allow for a reduction in the buffer. With a 35-foot setback, you would require a 20-foot buffer across the property typically, because it's 15 feet for 40 normally. And then you usually go a foot for foot typically. That's my understanding in Shinnecock Shores for bulkheaded properties. So it would be a 20-foot buffer instead of a 24-foot buffer for what they were granted previously. So what we're asking for here is to maintain the smaller new shed that is on pilings, hurricane strapped to pilings, is my understanding from my client. In its present location, it is utilized for boating equipment and the outdoor equipment for the yard. It's at the bottom of a now 4-foot-high masonry retaining wall in gravel. They are amenable to planting a buffer up to the retaining wall inclusive of the planter that's there, which I know typically is not allowed in a buffer. The planter right now is planted with little blue stem. They're amenable to maintaining that planter with native plantings if the board would allow for that to be within the buffer or to just keep it as a native planted planter. I don't know. We're here to discuss that, basically. But that's what we're looking for. So what we've done is, in lieu of doing a 20-foot buffer across the whole property, we're showing a 25 feet to the bulkhead with a 5-foot buffer in front of the shed. It's the same square footage, ultimately, just rearranged.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's everything that I wrote down.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me 1 second, Daphne.
Yes,
Is there any water or electricity going to the shed?
no,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Good evening, I'm Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. The initial application that had been made to this board was received on November 13, 2020. And as indicated, that application had been made in order to gain this board's approval to construct a swimming pool. When I completed my initial inspection, I found at that time that a new frame shed had been constructed on the property, approximately 8 feet from wetlands. The landowner had not obtained the requisite wetland permit to build that shed. So that was one of many items that were discussed at the lengthy hearing on the initial application. And it was full discussion of the board's recommendations for a 20-foot buffer, and that the unauthorized shed be relocated on the property. When I had initially arrived on the property on November 18, 2020, the bulkhead had been newly installed, and the majority of the ground between the house and the bulkhead was disturbed. You had a gradual slope, no retaining walls at that time. So there, at that time, the shed could have easily been relocated further landward. There is no grandfathering of structures pursuant to Chapter 325 of the Town Code, notwithstanding that there was a prior shed that may have been installed as early as 1980. There is no grandfathering provision in Chapter 325 of the Town Code that allows for replacement of the shed in that same location. The project plans that the board is seeking approval for do not conform with the standards that are held, that other property owners are held to in Shinnecock Shores. As was spoken to, typically on a bulkheaded canal, the board seeks a minimum construction setback of 40 feet to be offset by a minimum 15-foot buffer. Where the applicant seeks a lesser construction setback, the board looks to expand that buffer requirement at a 1-to-1 ratio. That is, for every 1 foot that the structure is closer than the minimum required 40 feet, the buffer equally has to be expanded by 1 feet. So the board had permitted construction at a pool at approximately 24 feet, 30 feet, I'm sorry, which is 10 feet less than the minimum wetland building setback that the board requires in Shinnecock Shores. And that's why the board expanded that standard requirement for a 15-foot buffer to 24 feet. What Chapter 325 directs this board and the town to do when someone is seeking relief from the required construction and buffer setbacks, to look at whether or not there are practicable alternatives to what the applicant is proposing. There is yet a practicable alternative. That shed could yet be relocated further landward on the property. While the conditional approval, which dates back to January 27, 2021, did allow for the applicant to come back with a plan for an untreated wood retaining wall landward of that 24-foot buffer. It did not allow for a lower planter, which, as you can see, is encroaching not only upon the previously required 24 feet of buffer, but also would encroach within the buffer that's being proposed at this time. If you take a look at the site photographs, we're not speaking with regards to a minimal planter. The planter runs at least 3/4 of the length of the property. It has low stone retaining walls. So it's a significant structure. And I can think of no occasion where the board has allowed for this type of structure in a required buffer. As was indicated, is notwithstanding the granting of the conditional approval and remediation that was required on part of this board, the landowner elected to go ahead with construction of essentially those tiered walls on the property without the requisite wetland permit. The shed is a frame shed. The shed can be dismantled and relocated alongside the proposed patio and pool. That would be on the north side of the proposed patio and pool. The landowner constructed retaining walls and lower plant with full knowledge that might pose some difficulties in terms of the required relocation of that shed and the use of the shed for the purposes of storing boating equipment and such. That being said, the property is equipped with masonry steps, so even if the shed was shifted further landward on the property as required by this board, you could still access the waterfront and still carry various materials and equipment from the shed to the bulkheaded shorefront. There was mention made of that consideration could be given to the reduction of the scale of the footprint of the shed, and the relocation, I'm sorry, that consideration could be given to the proposed reduction in the size of the pool and shifting of that pool further landward, which could potentially be considered with regards to a lessening of the required buffer. I think the pool is the patio, the pool is shown at 35 feet from the bulkhead. I guess the coping is a foot closer. And the lower concrete walled, stone-walled planter is at least 23 feet. So notwithstanding any consideration on part of the applicant to reduce the size of the pool, there is still significant structural work that they're looking for this board to approve, inclusive of the planter and the shed, significantly closer to wetlands. I can think of no occasion where the board has approved a shed or a structure of this size this close to the bulkhead. In Shinnecock Shores, we try and be consistent as we can as far as requiring that landowners adhere to that minimum 40-foot setback for construction, offset by a 15-foot buffer, or where a lesser construction setback is approved, that that lesser setback be offset by an equal increase in the buffer. The buffer is less functional if it's not a continuous block. There is always concern regarding sheds when they're located close to a bulkhead. As this board well remembers, during Superstorm Sandy, many of the properties in Shinnecock Shores were significantly flooded. And along canals, one of the first structures to be impacted can be a shed within close proximity to the bulkhead. And it's not only the damage to the structure. There's concern about the materials that may be stored in sheds. Typically, gasoline is stored in sheds, sometimes fertilizers, pesticides. And when you have a significant flood event or you have a storm event, there is the potential for significant pollution of the surface waters. So in recognition of the directive and instructions that are contained in Chapter 325 and the policies and standards that the board applies to Shinnecock Shores, and the need to always look at whether or not there are practicable alternatives. I don't see how this plan could meet the standards for permit issuance. And so I would still, even though consideration could potentially be given to lessening the width of the buffer, I would strongly recommend that that shed yet be relocated further landward. To legalize that shed in that location will set a very bad precedent for future applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
In the file should also be some photos that I submitted with the application that show the whole property at present, so you can see the retaining wall.
I don't see them in here, Daph. I've seen a photo, but,
Yeah, I was looking at the ones on the wall too. I didn't see those.
but
Oh, that's because they're here.
Yeah.
They should be in the main file too, and I'll see if I have any additional photos.
I can take them down if you want. 'Cause I
yeah.
don't need them.
because I was looking for that photo myself.
Retaining wall across here.
Okay, yeah.
Lower retaining wall
I can,
here, steps going down
Yeah,
here.
these photos with the second.
Oh, yeah, they can have those too.
This is supposed to be
Yeah, you'll
over,
see on
and there's gravel in
the
there.
second page,
This is
there's
part of it. This
second
is
and
part
third
two with
pages
the
photos
lower retaining
of
wall.
the plant and retaining.
Yeah,
Yeah, it should be photo number
that
3 and 4.
that plant is in the buffer. Yeah.
That's where the lot line is up here. So this is a illegal structure.
So,
And the shed.
the planter is approximately 2 feet high, and the retaining wall beyond the planter is about another 3 feet high. So it's about a 5-foot-high retaining wall overall. The trustee permit that I gave you allowed for them to do maintenance dredging in front of the bulkhead when they replaced it, and to deposit the spoils on site. So I'm assuming that what they did is when they installed the retaining wall, they used the dredge spoil to backfill it. And that's how they got the soil. That's my guess. The owners are looking to retire here. They have grandchildren. They're looking to install the pool for their grandchildren. There will be very little lawn left up on the upper area near the house for the shed to be relocated. The shed where it is right now is the grandfathered-in location for the building department. To relocate it up above would need to meet setbacks, would be 8 feet off the property line, which would mean that the patio would actually need a foot cut off of it for the 8-foot shed to meet setbacks. It would have to actually be in front of the house to meet building code setbacks for zoning. So it would literally be butted up against the patio, 1 foot in front of the house, which I believe would be partially in front of their sliding glass door. Not necessarily that close to the house. It could be closer to the wall, but nonetheless, that would be a conforming location,
What did you say the side yard setback is for the shed?
8 feet. This is R10 zoning.
8 feet and,
And it's an 8-foot shed, so you need 16 feet. And we're showing 15.2 for the patio right now from that property line.
but the shed could go north of the pool. And you're shrinking the size of the pool.
What do you mean, north of the pool?
Do I have my directions right? Not north of the pool. Where's north?
There's a north arrow on the.
There's north. Yes, north of the proposed pool. Is there room north of the proposed pool to relocate the shed? The proposed pool is changing from 16 by 36 to
To 12 by 30.
12 by 30. There's 6 feet that could be available Add that to the 17 feet, you got 23 feet, you need 16 feet for the shed on the side yard. So now we got pretty much spaced in between the pool and the side yard, and the property line.
I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're talking about. Are you talking about south of the pool?
No, I'm talking about
On either side of the pool.
north of the pool.
North of the pool is the patio, and then that remaining lawn area, that's 15.2 feet to the property line. That should be north.
Okay, I don't see a place designated as patio on the survey.
No, you know what? I think we.
Are you looking at
have
the
that
same
one.
survey?
No, you don't. I noticed that too.
I knew it, yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
All right, now we're changing books here.
Okay,
This is color-coded. I like colors.
yeah, it's nice.
All right, now I see a proposed patio.
So that patio is right outside of a sliding glass door on the residence, and that would be the usable patio area for, table, chairs, whatever, to use.
Okay, so,
So this house has a crawl space, right? There's not a basement, there's no garage. The shed is the storage on the property, so there's not really opportunity here to store tons of things.
there is 0.8 feet that would encroach on the proposed patio in order to put the shed in the area Marty has suggested. That's 10 inches.
Which would also be in front of the door partially.
It would be.
So you'd be looking out your door at your shed. So although this board may not have granted sheds in this location in the past, they have granted walkways and, sunken stairways all along bulkheads, which have taken up more significant areas than what we're asking for here, to serve purposes for boat access, of accessibility to a bulkhead. Since they replaced the bulkhead, they also installed a fixed and floating dock for that purpose. So they don't need any additional area along the bulkhead. They're willing to plant the remainder of this area with native plantings, as far as beach grass or any other shrubs, grasses, wildflowers, to make it nice. And the planter was installed as an issue of safety, so that it's not just one big sheer fall-down area. Granted, there will be a fence along the top of the wall to act as the pool enclosure.
Daphne,
Yes,
here's the problem. You're coming here with an as-built, as-planned out, and trying to get it legalized. If this had been talked about before construction, there's way more flexibility. There's all kinds of things we can do. Now we're backed up in a corner. We never approved sheds down there in the buffer.
well, the shed is a replacement of a shed that was there before, and it's replaced with a smaller shed. How often do people do that? Usually they do something bigger. So
It's
that's,
also in the buffer.
but the buffer was not there when the shed was there. The shed was there prior to a buffer. And the buffer was asked for, conditioned upon
Once
a
again,
larger pool closer
if-
to the wetlands.
We could have talked about all this stuff earlier and worked out something, but that buffer was mitigation for the pool going in that place. And now we're caught between doing something which seems reasonable by you guys, but has huge implications for those guys listening to us saying, yes, we're gonna go and make an application next week because now we can put a shed in the buffer zone.
But not everyone has a shed that's pre-existing with a certificate of occupancy prior to 1957.
Okay, so we're not gonna get one next week, it'll be the following week.
this is a unique circumstance. There's not many of those that exist. There's pre-existing COs for houses, for decks, you know, not many for sheds. Sheds are like a weird thing that,
It's only a shed.
right. I get that.
It's not something we should spend a lot of time on.
But again, as I mentioned, I'm here because my clients had someone else represent them that did not give them the whole story back when this happened.
Look,
So
I
they were
understand that.
they were
That's not the first time.
moved forward, and they were not amenable to the conditions at that time. So
But rather than come
They-
back and get clarification, they just went ahead and hired a contractor to build the things they wanted to be built.
if I may.
All these are self-inflicted hardships that really are not our problem.
Joanne DiMaria is here. I'll write her name.
If I may offer.
Just say your name.
Joanne DiMaria. If I may offer, we sought different counsel. Daphne is the third advocate that we've hired or contracted for this. We were told that because there was a retaining wall, we were allowed to replace it. It should be replaced. The gullies were noted in Mr. Shea's report. They were a concern to us because we were waiting for a permit for the whole project. And then when we contracted this other attorney, he told us to replace the wall because it's doing damage to the environment. He didn't take us very far, so we've just been through a series of poor advisors.
It sounds
And that's
like
how
it.
the wall came to
The
be.
attorney was an environmental lawyer?
I'd rather not
degrees in
discuss who he
environment?
was, but he's from the area, and he led us down a very wrong road. We left the soft dirt that was dug up from the dead men being installed behind the seawall, in waiting to do a permit for the pool, the wall, and everything. And then when we took our business to the second person, he told us to put the wall in. So it wasn't done intentionally and to flagrantly, break the rules here. It was just poor advisement from professionals in the area. And we didn't know how to seek the right one until we were recommended to Daphne, who knows the law. And that's all I can offer you as an explanation for the sequence of events.
I can appreciate that. You're not the first one. It's difficult, especially when you get bad advice from people you expect to get good advice from.
That you pay to get good advice from.
Yes.
Hopefully you have some recourse to them.
At this point, we're going to get the project finished. But I can inform you that I'd be withdrawing the application for a pool if it forces us to move the shed. I'm not interested. It's the only place I have for storage.
No, you have built a shed that's illegal. You
Okay.
replaced the shed. You didn't repair the shed, you replaced it. That shed in its location is illegal. You'll get a violation if you withdraw and don't do something about it.
Okay.
If we
All
act
right.
differently. You don't have an option to keep the shed there.
See, another again, I was advised that we were allowed to replace the
There's no
structures that we
grandfathering.
had.
If you wanted to repair the shed that was there, that was something you could do if you had no application before us. But you didn't repair it, you replaced it. That requires a permit. It requires a permit from this board, which did not come through this board.
And if we were to withdraw the application for the pool and just file for the shed, would that be acceptable to this board?
And file for the shed where it is? No.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Because the
shed is part of-
mitigation for the pool was that buffer,
Mm-hmm.
including where the shed is.
So if I withdraw the application for the pool, there's no buffer required, correct?
Well,
There's a buffer for the
I-
bulkhead.
this is getting beyond my pay scale here.
I apologize.
I don't know the answer to that question, because you essentially have to come before this board to get a wetland permit to put in a shed, to replace a shed.
Okay. That shed was
so-
affected, did have some mortar stains in it, about 2 feet. It was
Well, I'm not questioning whether it was a
vermin
good
and
business thing to
It
do or.
wasn't, it was
or-
not a place that we would even want to enter, let alone
Yeah,
store our
and-
belongings in.
And that's not the issue here.
Yeah,
But putting a shed there is very difficult for us because of our history and what we've always done. I don't understand why it's not a possibility to put that shed up above the retaining wall.
my husband and I are aging to be carrying boating equipment up and down a flight of stairs. I'm not well enough to do that, and neither is he. We only have a 1-foot cap on our bulkhead because we didn't wish to apply for a variance for a lot, so we can't put a dock box down on the bulkhead. It's the only place for storage, and that was sufficient enough for our needs. That's why we didn't widen the cap, so that we could place storage boxes there.
Everybody seems young to me.
I retire this June from my position. So, ideally, we'd like to have the pool. It's good for our health, it's good for my health and my health challenges at this point in time. We're just trying to legalize everything now because we were ill-advised
Yeah,
along the way.
well.
Not
as
by
I
one, but
said-
by two.
Yeah, as I said earlier, it's so much easier to look at everything at the beginning before anything's done.
Absolutely.
And then we can get a good plan that
Absolutely.
everybody can live with. At this point, somebody's gonna get burned.
Well, the wall is in line with my neighbor's walls. We haven't done anything there. We didn't wish to put a 6-foot wall in, so they put footings in, and each wall is under the limit of what it needs to be. That's why we tiered it. As it was in the prior, before it was disrupted, it was a tiered wall. So we tiered it again. It was terraced all along the way to the top, which I imagine is a safer situation if a pool sat behind it, as opposed to one wall that could cave. One tall wall.
There may be an opportunity to be creative. There's obviously a problem with that shed right there.
Okay.
Have you thought about what you're using the shed for, and if you have to use that shed for all those things?
I have no garage on my home. I mean, these were small bungalows that were converted, renovated, and now re-renovated. There's any spreader for fertilizer, anything that we would do in our yard is stored in that shed. And I can't bring them into the house.
Those things are just as usable if the shed was on top of the retaining wall.
Right?
What is in that shed, what is that shed gonna be used for, which is critical to be used down there?
Lines, safety jackets that we need to bring onto the boat, any type of boating, anything that he needs for the boat is in there.
Like, what kind of stuff is big or heavy?
Big or heavy, the thing to tow for the kids in the back of the boat, that float that they drag along behind the boat, skis, water skis, jackets, a lot of jackets. It's a big family.
This is what I'm thinking about. If there's a shed placed in that area above the retaining wall for most of your needs because you don't have other storage, and then think of the minimal amount of things you need that needs to be down lower, and rather than a shed, could there be something like the planter thing here with a cover to reach in and get a few things? And look, this is not offering you something. I'm just trying to think, to throw out some ideas to find a way to get through this impasse so that you can have what you need, and yet we don't get hurt by doing something that's going to come back and haunt us.
I
if
don't
the
know
answer-
how it would haunt you. My neighbors have 5, 6 sheds along their properties.
Well,
I think Daphne could show you the aerials. of
Daphne
that.
knows how it can hurt us.
We have one in the
And
same
it-
areas.
And it's also an hour into the meeting, and we probably should adjourn this. I don't have all the answers right now. I don't
Okay.
think we all do.
You could take it under advisement.
But I feel for you, and you
Thank you.
need something.
Thank you.
And I don't think this board would be right to do something that prevents you from doing what you need to do on that property, but I think there may be another way that's more creative to accomplish your needs and still stay within the criteria that we need to stay within.
Okay.
I don't know what all that looks like yet, and it may require more discussion. So that's why I'm thinking that, and Daphne can be very creative. But you've already got a planter that's actually in the buffer illegal. I don't know what we're gonna do about that, but there may be a way to leave that there. I don't really know at this point.
I slated like all the indigenous plants to be put in there. We just did it to terrace the wall as it was before and not to have a 6-foot, monolith hanging out there. I don't think that would look
But-
good in the neighborhood either.
Before we go too far there, I would like to ask Marty, I don't want to put you on the spot, Marty, but Daphne spoke about reducing the size of the pool, and therefore our policy be reducing the buffer. Does that have any weight? Is there a play on that to allow for some use? I'm thinking about using a place opposite the planter on the other side to put storage stuff, right attached to the wall.
Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. As I implied in my earlier testimony, the issue, of course, is the shed. If the shed was relocated, there would be an ability to retain and legalize the retaining wall, to legalize the entirety of the planter, and also to reduce the buffer. If the shed was relocated at a setback consistent with the pool and patio, acknowledging at the pool coping, it looks like it's 34 feet from the seaward face of the bulkhead. The width of the buffer, consistent with the standards you apply in Shinnecock Shores, could be reduced to 21 feet. So there would be a reduction in buffer. That would allow for some, you'd be able to walk on the immediate seaward side of the lower retaining wall. With regards to your consideration of other options, there may indeed be an ability to take a portion of that plant and just create a storage bin in there to put the life jackets, to put the skis. They'd have lawn space where they could landward of the buffer, where they could walk up to that, and they could more easily take those jackets and other boating accessories that were referred to, than having to take them down from a relocated shed. I think there is a need to explore other options. I think the shed, though, has to be moved landward of that retaining wall.
Okay, so,
You
you okay with what I'm saying?
Yeah, the shed's got to be
You okay with
moved.
that?
Moving the shed up.
Yeah. You okay? So let's adjourn this for whatever time you need. Talk to your husband, talk to Daphne, talk to a builder, see what can be constructed down there my thinking is attached to that retaining wall in a way that protects from the weather and all, to accomplish what you need to do down there, but nothing more, just minimize that, and put another shed, this shed or a different shed up above to cover those bigger things, your lawn equipment or whatever those things are. Because that shed down there there's just no way we can approve that. Just no way. But we still want you to be able to use your property in a way that, especially as your time now with you retired. And I think there's a way to do that. But think carefully about it and be creative and make it so that it's going to work. And don't build anything until you come back.
Oh, no. Thank you. You tried to make it look nice.
It looks beautiful.
Thank you.
You've done a beautiful job. Just, we caught before the horse.
Thank you.
Okay, Daphne?
Yeah, okay, that's fine, understood.
Awesome.
The seaward side of the lower planter wall is 20 feet from the bulkhead. I just scaled it out.
Okay.
So 21 feet would be the wall itself, the planter wall.
Well, I'm thinking of the other side of the staircase, not with the.
Yeah,
with the
no, I
planters
agree.
Not, and there's some space there. I
Yes.
think there's enough space to do something productive.
Okay.
When do you want to come back?
What's the next meeting?
It's,
April 13th.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine, I have to be
how
here.
many do we have on there?
I better put a call into Tom.
Print out the hearing calendar, I can go downstairs and print it
Give me
out.
the run across the hall.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
all right, she's gonna check that hearing schedule, I've got that printed.
So April 13th?
We're in a
We're gonna-
meeting.
Oh, sorry.
You can look at that hearing calendar, see how many items are on there.
I have to be here for something else that I have to have a conversation with Marty about. But that's not for now. So April 13th would be great for me.
All right.
Let's just wait for our calendar.
Yeah.
Come back.
We have two on, unless this is from the last meeting, though, I don't know if anything was added.
It'd be the same.
No, let me just see, the new items don't need to go to a hearing. So, yeah, one of these items is definitely,
Oh.
I'm expecting when you come back, it's going to be boom, 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 we're done.
Yeah,
Because you know exactly what you got to do.
Yep.
You just got to do it the right way, the little details, you can fill those in. And I don't expect this is going to take very long at all. We hash it out tonight.
okay.
All right, April 13th.
Sounds like a plan.
Is there, I gotta do my legal thing. Is there anyone in the public who wants to speak in this application? There being none, is there a motion to adjourn till April 13th?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good night.
A02-1052, Max Shapiro.
We do have affidavits of posting and mailing in compliance with the town code, and the board does have jurisdiction to open the hearing.
Thank you. Well, we got lots of papers here. Put them in the file.
Yeah, I'll
Sunshine have anything down there? No?
Nope, that is everything, yep.
You good?
Yep.
Nothing?
I'll be right back.
These are extra copies, I don't know if you want to put this in there too. Okay.
you.
I give you the right one? Okay. Yeah, that's the right one.
Good?
Uh,
Thank you.
This is around the corner from us.
Wow.
Near that lane. And this is Tillis Pond is up here. This is underground, sometimes above ground. It goes across the road. We don't have projects here. It goes across Newcastle Road. This is Red Creek.
Did you announce it? I don't remember.
I did.
Okay.
And you have jurisdiction, you may present
Oh,
your
great.
application.
Excellent. Daphne Vaughn, Surfside Environmental, here for Max Shapiro and Jared Sheldon. Okay, so I'm going to hand out some stuff, starting with some more recent site photos.
Thank you.
I have a packet of some historical aerials. This is a copy of the building department certificate of compliance and the associated survey for the swimming pool. And this is a lovely overlay of we call this the USA Today version of the project. This is the existing, and then an overlay of what we're proposing. Okay. So our original application was filed last June for the subject property at 315 New Light Lane in Bridgehampton for the demolition of the existing decking and existing 2540 swimming pool, legalization of reconstruction of a front porch and a front entry deck, and construction of a new elevated patio and steps with a 16 by 32 pool with a 7 by 7 spa within it. Located within the approximate location of the existing decking and swimming pool with a slight expansion. The patio was also to contain a pergola attached to the house.
Sorry, you're gonna have to stop for 1 second, because we don't have a quorum, George.
Yep, as soon as somebody leaves, you have to stop.
Pause. Okay.
Go ahead.
So our original proposal was for the construction of an elevated patio containing a reduced swimming pool from the 20 by 40 to a 16 by 32 with a 7 by 7 spa within it, and a pergola and outdoor kitchen on the patio. That would be closer to the house. The remainder of the project was for reconfiguration of the existing driveway and a new driveway gate, with restoration of disturbed areas of the property with native plantings that were the subject of unauthorized activity undertaken by the owner's contractor in 2020, shortly after the start of COVID. The contractor made attempts to file appropriate applications with the Town Environment Division that were never deemed complete. The property is comprised of 40,035 square feet, with less than half of it, 18,540 square feet, designated as upland area. The remainder of the property contains wetlands vegetation and a 20-foot wide drainage easement that's associated with the Kellis Pond Farm subdivision that was filed in 1969. The wetlands are associated with Kellis Pond to the east, and they connect with wetlands across New Light Lane that are associated with Calf Creek, which is a tributary to Mecox Bay. Town records indicate the residence was relocated to the property in 1973, and the swimming pool that's there was permitted in 1981, and that's the certificate of compliance that I gave you with that survey showing that location, which is where it exists today. So our application serves to bring the property into compliance with the prior contractor's errors of 2020 and present a new project to upgrade and enhance the existing backyard amenities for the owners. We received a notice of incomplete from Mr. Shea on June 10th of 2021 requesting additional information pertaining to fill associated with the pool and elevated patio, wanting to know the existing sanitary location and requesting revisions to the proposed buffer restoration plan submitted with the application. Last summer, we spent a great deal of time working together with the owners and the landscape architects, Barry Block, to come up with an alternative plan, which is what should be with my January submission. To minimize the need for the fill and better accommodate the New York State DEC requirements for 20% maximum impervious upland lot coverage on the parcel. So our design became our current plan, which keeps a portion of the project closest to the house as an elevated deck with that same pergola and outdoor kitchen on that deck. And then leads to a lower but still elevated pool patio set in gravel surrounded by retaining walls, enclosing it to elevate that pool to the requisite 2 feet above groundwater. The pool is still proposed at 16 by 32 with that 7 by 7 spa within it. That's reduced from that original 20 by 40 that was approved back in the 80s, I believe it is. I don't even have it in front of me. 81, thank you. Too much paper. So that pool will have a maximum depth of 5 feet. The current pool is 8 feet deep and is definitely sitting in groundwater for a portion of the year right now. It's a vinyl-lined pool right now. The new pool will be gunite. That patio where the pool is then leads to a set of metal-edged lawn steps that lead down to a small lawn area behind that. So the project accommodates an upland lot coverage of 19.74%, which is in compliance with the DEC's requirements. The landscape plans depict the recommended plant species changes that were requested in that June notice of incomplete, and also show maintenance pathways and areas around the residence and proposed deck and pool and patio areas. The proposed lawn areas will be fenced in for the owner's dogs. to safely roam on the property away from the wetlands areas. We're proposing proper drainage for the pool and the spa, and to elevate the pool within that retaining wall, 85 cubic yards of fill are required. So as my little overlay shows, the entirety of the project is really within the confines of the existing structures, with the slight expansion of the deck that's along the house, just further along the house, but in line with the pool decking that's there. Kind of fills in the blanks and fills in the blanks between the two decks. If you look at the site photos between the two decks right now, there's a small access way to the pool from the deck, but it's otherwise, there's privet in between and hydrangeas, I believe, on the other side. So it would be filling in that area with deck to make it one contiguous structure, but it would actually be elevated in two areas. So it would be a deck off of the house that would go to a lower pool area set in gravel with retaining walls, to then grassed in metal-backed stairs that go down to the lawn. We tried to make it something that would flow and still be able to be utilized for the needs of the owners, and work, with the natural surroundings to the best of our ability, utilizing the pre-existing non-conforming setbacks. What else?
Daphne, I have a question for you.
Yes.
You spoke about how you need to do patio instead of deck because of the DEC coverage definitions.
Yes.
Do you have a calculated number of how many feet in excess so that you would have to remove in order to comply with DEC's regulations?
Where's my survey? Right here. So right now, they're actually not compliant. The existing coverage is at 21.66% with the structures the way that they are. And this is very difficult to read, so that's why we did our version.
Okay.
So the existing house, pool with decking and decking, that's really all that's there,
Yeah,
is 21.66% of the upland area, which, as I stated, is less than half of the property. Yes,
and what does DEC require?
20%. So we're 1.6% over. So with our plan currently, we're actually coming into better compliance with that at 19.74%.
You are in compliance, right?
Yes, yes.
Now, is that utilizing patios or is that utilizing decking?
That's utilizing partial decking immediately along the house, and then the pool would be surrounded in gravel with some stepping stones here and there. And the DEC would allow for that as pervious. As long as it's a 60% open material or gravel, they would not count that in their lot coverage. So I have submitted my application to the DEC. I did contact them, and it is under review still. So I have not had a response from them on our application, but in my experience, we should be compliant. I've done this on other projects before, and it's
Okay, you've
passed.
answered my question, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Where was I? So that deck expansion along the back of the house is 13 feet, and like I said, it is in line with that pool deck that's already there, filling in that area that's really unusable space right now. The existing septic system, as you can see on the survey, we did locate it, and it is partially within the area that we're showing as a buffer. The owners have no problem doing the plantings that are proposed here. We are showing a 5-foot maintenance path around the pool patio area and a 4-foot access path around the house because it is so close to the wetlands. As I stated, the house was placed here in 1973. So kind of is what it is. The pool was put there in the early 80s, and we just really want to replace it in its existing location in a better manner and make it more compliant by bringing it 2 feet above groundwater with proper drainage. So if the board is amenable to this buffer, I don't know if it's possible for us to, in a covenant, state that the septic system would be within the buffer, and if we were to replace it in the future, it would, would need to be maintained in its current location, and then the possibility for removal and relocation at a future date. That's the only caveat. Because it is right here, right along the driveway right now.
Is there, you got your master's in septic systems. Is there a way to design an IA system that's compliant with your proposals?
What do you mean by that?
Well,
Oh, that-
what I'm saying is, I want to be careful that we don't preempt approvals here so that you cannot put an IA system in at a later date.
Yeah, no, I understand, yeah, yes. So we believe that there is sufficient area on this side location to put something in that would comply with health department standards and would maximize wetland setbacks at a future date.
Okay,
It's not necessary at this time, but, in the future, they do want to have that ability to do that.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Again, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. This is a very fragile area. It has very significant freshwater wetlands, very important in terms of wildlife habitat. If you walk through the continuum of the corridor of freshwater wetlands, you see quite a lot of diversity and maturity in terms of native flora. So it is an area of lowland. It is an area that seasonally floods. It is an area that provides significant public values and benefits. I'd like to just take a step back and give you a little bit of history. The history and the project plans are well described by my February 2nd, 2022 preliminary advisory report, which is on file and on record for this application. Initially, an administrative wetland permit application had been filed for this property. Because the building division had issued a notice violation and stop work order. Not only had the landowner at that time commenced construction without requisite wetland and building permits, they also had cleared a significant area of natural vegetation between the house and the road. So an administrative wetland permit application was submitted to rectify those items. The application also called for replacing the existing pool that, by all appearances, would seem to be fully functional, to replace that pool with a new pool and to do fairly extensive work in terms of accessory improvements on this property. The landowner was advised that because significant wetland construction and buffer setback was being sought, that a application would need to be made to this board. That application was received on June 3rd, 2021. My office had provided a lot of recommendations that centered on the requirements of the wetland permit issuance standards as set forth in Chapter 325, that require that where an applicant is seeking significant relief in terms of the required wetland construction and buffer setbacks, that they undertake an analysis of practicable alternatives. Although the applicant did spend some time preparing plans for resubmittal, they were very hesitant about considering any alternative design options for this property. Some of the reasons that I asked for those design options to be considered is the plans, first to start, if you look at the scope of accessory improvements that are being proposed at this time, it would take in what appears to be a significantly larger area than the existing home. So we're talking about a significant increase in the intensity of development on a very fragile piece of land within immediate proximity to valued freshwater wetlands. In fact, the setbacks, the closest setbacks are not actually shown on the survey. In addition to proposing a new pool that's only 27 feet from wetlands, they are proposing to bring in a significant quantity of fill in order to elevate a pervious stone patio around the perimeter of the pool, which at its closest point would only be 12 feet from wetlands. The required minimum construction setbacks for developed properties, of course, is 100 feet for construction and 75 feet for a buffer. So as Chapter 325 again instructs the board and the applicant to evaluate practicable alternatives in the interest of increasing wetland construction setbacks and naturally vegetated buffers, I had recommended that the applicant do several things. First, from the start, I have advised the applicant that today we don't allow for deposition of large quantities of fill on property within close proximity for wetlands. Not only does that practice significantly modify the existing terrain, it also alters the flooding and drainage patterns. It changes the value of the area in terms of wildlife dispersal and movement. It can increase runoff. So I had asked that the applicant consider, first of all, construction of decks rather than elevated patio. The patio that's proposed right now would be 3 to 4 feet above grade, and as indicated by the applicants, the fill would need to be contained by retaining walls around the periphery. Today, we really only allow fill for the purposes of elevation of the septic system where required by the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. We don't allow for fill for the purposes of elevating patios. We've had some recent applications before this board where, in response to the board's concerns and my concerns, other applicants have eliminated elevated patios and fill consistent with that goal. So I ask that the applicant consider deck that allows for untreated wood deck that allows for greater infiltration and doesn't require this marked change to the terrain. And of course, the applicant has responded that decks are considered impervious structures by DEC, so if they propose decks, they would exceed the DEC maximum 20% impervious coverage threshold. They did not offer to reduce the footprint of the decks in an effort to try and come forward with a plan that is more favored in terms of lessening impacts. They simply said, well, this is the scope of the improvements that we want, and if we construct all decks rather than elevated pervious patios, we'll have difficulty obtaining a DEC permit. Now, the DEC's requirement that they meet that threshold and the issues they're having with meeting that threshold should tell you something about this property and its environmental sensitivity. So the DEC requires that applicants comply with that threshold in order to minimize the level of improvement within close proximity to state regulated wetlands. Because it did not appear that there was much willingness on part of the applicant to consider practicable alternatives, even though they're required to do that as per the wetland permit issuance standards. For the purposes of discussion and to look at possible options for the site, I provided a sketch which would reorient the pool, reduce the scope of accessory improvements, eliminate the planned fill, replace the patio with deck, and significantly increase the setbacks. The applicant is proposing a pool at its closest setback of 27 feet. I'm going to hand out a staff sketch which the applicant has. Which shows possible design option that would enable the applicant to significantly increase the setbacks for the pool. In fact, it shows a 14-foot by 28 feet long pool at a minimum setback of 42 feet from wetlands, as compared to the 27-foot setback that the applicant is showing. It also, and although the deck area on this plan could be increased, it shows a minimum setback for the deck of 30 feet as compared to the proposed 12-foot setback for the elevated patio area. The sketch I provided is compliant in terms of the building and zoning code, in terms of the required dimensional setbacks, so they would not have to seek zoning board of appeals variance for a reorientation of the pool and a concept similar to what is shown on this sketch. There, where an applicant is unable to provide an average overall buffer of 75 feet, the applicant is directed to maximize the buffer. So my plan would also call for an increased area of buffer, which would wrap around the north side of the property, while still allow for a lawn on the east side of the deck and pools, so they would have the fenced-in area for their dog. So I really have not seen the applicant come forward with required analysis of practicable alternatives. I would, as communicated to the applicant over the many months, I would yet recommend that the applicant revisit their plans in the interest of reducing the scope, increasing wetland building setbacks, and increasing the extent of restored buffer on the property. There were other issues relatively minor in comparison that need to be addressed. There is roof runoff right now that's being directed into downspouts that aren't going into dry wells immediately adjacent to the wetlands. There are issues with unauthorized hedging and fence lines. My plan still allows for the proposed access path around the periphery of the residence. It shows the same buffer that the applicant is proposing roadside, but it does, through a reorientation of the pool and deck, significantly increases the minimum construction setbacks. When I have an application like this before me, what I typically do is I look at other Conservation Board decisions for constrained properties such as this. And first, of course, the pool footprint is not grandfathered. So when you demolish a pool and you're going to construct a new pool, even if it's smaller, you're required to go through that process of looking at various design options with the goal of maximizing wetland building setbacks and buffers. Although I show a certain deck configuration on this plan, that I have no issue with the deck footprint increasing beyond what I'm showing on this plan, so long as they're able to provide the minimum 30-foot buffer alongside the wetlands and provide for a greater buffer in the rear of the lot. So in reviewing the wetland permit issuance standards that are set forth in Chapter 325, I do not believe that the applicant has yet demonstrated that there are no practicable alternatives. So I would again ask the applicant to revisit their plan with the goal of increasing wetland, reducing the scale of the project, increasing wetland building setbacks, and increasing the buffer. Thank you.
Excuse me 1 second, Marty.
Yes.
Would this sketch still allow for an IAOWTS?
Yes, it would on the east side of the residence, yes. I also had that in mind, similar to the applicant, yes.
In the area where it says proposed kitchen? along-
Yeah, that's all lawn area in there. Yeah, that
Okay.
would be possible. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Marty.
So, I would argue that our current plan is our practicable alternative, because our original plan was our original plan that we didn't actually get to discuss with this board, because we received a notice of incomplete. And in that notice of incomplete, it asked us to look at alternatives to our plan. So we did. We spent the better part of 2 months coming up with the plan that is before you. I did email it to Marty, and it took some time for correspondence back and forth for that. And then Marty did give us his advice that he still didn't like it. So we felt that it was necessary to bring the plan before the board for the board's opinion, because there's only so many alternatives that one can come up with on this highly constrained property without any opinion of the Conservation Board. It did take us 3 months to have this put onto the survey due to a backlog by the surveyor. 3 months is a very long time for a survey revision. I'm having this problem with this surveyor on a number of projects right now. So it's not just this project. But that's why we got a notice of incomplete in June, and it took me till January to get a resubmission package to you. And my resubmission requested this hearing so that we could have this conversation. And I did put together this overlay to make it simple, because the survey is extremely difficult to understand. It is a very highly constrained property. There's a lot of wetlands here. As I mentioned, the owners had a contractor who did the clearing that Marty referenced, and also put in the wire fence and hedging. The wire fence and hedging is addressed in the landscape plan that we submitted. There's no issue with removal of that, and we're remedying that situation as part of the buffer that we're proposing. We're proposing native plantings within this whole area surrounding the house. I would argue that the pool is grandfathered in. It's an existing swimming pool that's been there since 1981. So why wouldn't they be entitled to replace it with a 20 by 40 swimming pool in the same exact location? I don't see why that would be an issue for this board. If they were to just replace the pool in place, same thing, better, you know, as I mentioned, sorry, the pool's 8 feet deep right now. It's sitting in groundwater. We're proposing to make it 5 feet deep, elevate it where it's supposed to be, 2 feet above groundwater. We're using the minimum amount of fill possible to do that, 85 cubic yards, where originally we were proposing an elevated patio that was going to be 4 feet high, straight across, in the same footprint. That would have utilized a whole lot more than 85 cubic yards, probably hundreds of cubic yards of fill. So we did a significant reduction already in the project for the fill. The roof runoff that Marty mentioned, needing dry wells, that is obviously something that we can address on a survey revision. That must be something that the contractor, which Max Shapiro can certainly attest to, did not complete and can be addressed for certain on any revision. There is a need for a 20-foot setback for any sanitary components from a swimming pool. So I'm not sure if Marty's plan would accommodate that, just the way that it's oriented with the way that a septic system would need to fit in. We did have the surveyor do a mock-up, roughly. Ironically, he was able to do that in the 3 months, but couldn't do my revisions. And he did lay it out and showed me that it would fit with the plan that we have currently, which again utilizes the existing footprint. It reduces the swimming pool to 16 by 32 from the existing 20 by 40. I did do a FOIL request on some of the surrounding properties. There's not much going on around here, but of note that is most interesting is the adjacent property to the north, which is the Zabada property that this board may be familiar with. I believe they are extreme violators of the wetlands who had done a significant amount of clearing. The buffer on their property, and I can submit this, it's not great because it's a printout of a cell phone picture of their survey, but their average width of their buffer is really not that significant. Our buffer would match up with theirs on their southern property line, and it's a narrow width right here that goes along their existing driveway. So that expansion of buffer that Marty's looking for over here, where we're proposing some lawn and this planting, would be buffer that would be next to their small buffer, next to their driveway. So I'm not sure that that would be any big contiguous swath. It really wouldn't. It would just be a small swath next to their small swath. And the contiguous portion would be next to their larger contiguous portion on their property. So I can submit this for the board to see. Oh, goodness. I know that Max Shapiro is here, and he would like to say a few words to the board, unless you have any questions for me right now.
I do have some questions. I'm looking at your overlay. And I'm looking at simply looking at just the lot coverage aspect. It appears that there is an area between the existing pool and the existing residence on the wetland side, which is an increase in coverage from existing. I'm not sure any more area is increased. Am I reading that properly, or am I skipping something?
It's that, let's call it a rectangle, and then it would be the sliver between the two decks that's currently vegetation. Do you see that?
Okay, yes, I do.
The rest of it's the same.
Okay. Now, the water level of the existing pool, do you know how that would compare with the water level of the proposed pool? In other words, is the whole top of the pool water rising, or is it about the same?
I believe it would be slightly higher. Is that what you're asking, like the height of
Yes.
the pool? The height of the pool, if it was here now, I believe it would be slightly higher
Okay.
than it
Because you're
currently is.
proposing the bottom of the pool to be elevated 3 feet,
Yes,
plus
I need my plans.
the amount that that water level would rise, because you're looking for a 5-foot pool.
I don't think it could be tremendously higher because the deck is going to be the same height as the existing deck off
Okay.
of the back of the house.
All right, that's close enough, so that,
So it's not going to be, it's not like it's 3 feet higher than it is right now. If
okay, then the
that's what you're
fill,
asking.
the fill is primarily going to be used under,
Around the
at the
pool.
bottom of, at the bottom of the pool rather than around the pool. Is that correct?
It should be, well, both, I guess. Hold on. Let me look at the plan. No, it would be really okay, so the existing pool is going to be filled in, right? Right? And then. 'cause
That's what
there-
you want the fill for, right?
Yeah, partially, because if you look at the plans, they're showing the existing grade, and that the pool will be elevated 3 feet above the existing grade, and 2 feet below grade, and then another 2 feet to groundwater. So basically, you're filling in part of the existing pool and then around the pool for the patio. Does that make sense?
So that means the pool right now is in the groundwater approximately 1 foot.
Approximately. If it's at the same level.
Okay. Now that's, I just wanted to clarify the numbers. That clarifies. Thank you. I think Max wants to speak.
Okay.
I'm Max Shapiro, homeowner. Thank you very much for your attention to this matter tonight. On behalf of my fiance Jared and me, we purchased our home in June 2019, and we began construction right as COVID began in March 2020. At that time, we traveled to Florida to live with my parents, and unfortunately, without us being physically present in the Hamptons, we discovered too late that the contractor we engaged proceeded in several activities without our knowledge or permission, including what was referenced, the clearing of the then existing landscaping on the property, which, except for all of you, no one is more upset than us because we love that landscaping, and we've had no landscaping in mud ever since then. And we unfortunately had a very terrible experience with that contractor among other lines. However, based on that very terrible experience, when we decided to approach the town again regarding a new deck, pool, and landscaping, we made the decision to work with Daphne because we wanted to make sure that we did everything appropriately, properly, by the books, and that we didn't make a move without someone we trusted, and so that we knew what we were doing was right. We love our property. We love our local community. And you've never seen two happier dogs than ours on our property. Since we've been working with Daphne, and even before then, all the times we resubmitted a plan, we actually thought we were coming more in adherence with what Mr. Shea's office wanted and with what the town wanted. And what prompted this hearing was the latest revision we got, which talked about the relocation of the pool, which to us was very surprising because it was just new information, very drastically different from everything that was discussed before, and very different from what we would like to do, especially from where we started and all the significant movement we thought we had made. So with that said, we feel very fortunate to have Daphne and all the great work that she's done, and the guidance that she provided, making sure that we didn't do anything more, or no one on our behalf did anything more without coming before you to discuss the appropriate plans. So thank you very much.
I'm Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. I'll be brief. First of all, with regards to the future opportunity to install an IA OWTS on this property, my plans are either consistent with their footprint in terms of allowing the same amount of area, or may even allow for a greater amount of area on the east side of the house. Because the minimum required setback in this zoning district is 30 feet, you'll see that the pool is, at its closest point is 30 feet. From that side yard, it's looking like the proposed gravel patio and rises leading down to the lawn would be closer than 30 feet. So certainly my plan either allows for the same amount of area for a future septic upgrade or even more area. With regards to the comments about the Zapata, Patrick Zapata property to the north, which is in the process of being sold, that's a very different application from what's before you. Notwithstanding the significant wetland violations that occurred on that property, Mr. Zapata is neither proposing nor has obtained approval for construction of a swimming pool or for very extensive accessory improvements. Unfortunately, what happened on Mr. Zapata's property is he went and filled a significant area of freshwater wetlands, extended lawn into that area. Both this board and my office had required that fill be wholly removed from the wetlands pursuant to an approved reclamation plan that was not only highlighted as part of the Conservation Board review, but my recollection was it was also authorized by administrative wetland permit. And he has since removed the fill from the wetlands, restored that area to native wetland vegetation. There is still an upland area where he needs to install additional native plants. But it's a very different situation, a very different application than the application before you. And just to provide further clarification with regard to the question about the intended use of the fill, consistent with the applicant's testimony, some of that fill would be utilized to perhaps fill some of the excavated area when the existing pool is taken out. But the majority of the fill would be used to create an elevated surrounding patio. That would be about 3 to 4 feet above the existing grade. And that shows in the detail on the survey in the lower left-hand corner. I would recommend that the hearing be adjourned tonight because while the applicant has indicated that this is a second alternative and therefore a practicable alternative, further analysis is needed in terms of practicable alternatives. Because again, the applicant is seeking a 12-foot setback for an elevated patio and only 27-foot setback for a new pool, which is very shy of what's required. While they, because of the constraints of the property, they cannot meet the required setbacks, there's certainly room for significant improvement. There's certainly an ability to scale down the scope of the improvements, to look at reorientation in order to significantly increase the wetland construction and buffer setbacks. So I would recommend that the hearing be adjourned tonight so that the applicant can give further consideration to the testimony that was provided tonight and hopefully come back with a revised plan for further consideration.
Thank you, Mike. Sure.
Hi, Jared Seligman. I'm Max Shapiro's partner and co-owner of 315 New Light Lane. If adjourning the meeting is something you guys would like to do, we're more than open to it, but just to suggest the sheer adjournment of a meeting to come back with a revised plan. We've been working on this plan for almost 2 full years, or since we've engaged Daphne's firm after this whole horrible, terrible series of mistakes when we hired someone that we trusted who went behind our back and engaged an outside landscaper to illegally clear our property without even so much as giving us a proposal or any signed documentation. Long story short, this doesn't even look like the initial concept we even had. This is not even a small iteration of that. This is maybe our over 24 approaches with Daphne before we even went to Mr. Shea's office, as well as taken in 2 very serious, if not 3, series of emails from Mr. Shea's office with a list of concerns that we went back and revised for a 3rd time before we submitted it formally to you guys. So just, I don't want it to come in here like we just submitted some random document and have no idea what we're doing. We made terrible mistakes at the beginning. We had no idea what we were doing. And had we had known, we would have come here first before anything was done. But we would really love to get feedback from the board and really just understand where we're coming from and hopefully come to some sort of resolution. So I just wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Daphne. I think we need to put some boundaries on what we're talking about here, what needs to get done. So there's some minor things, the gutters, dry wells, that's not a big deal, but the biggest deal is, what I see is that this project, it appears to be increasing the footprint of the, how they define, I guess the DEC defines differently than the town does. But you've got impervious lot coverage. The trouble with those kinds of words is that they all have their own definition in the code. But when I look at your overlay, it looks like there's an expansion of this area, and yet this shows that there's not an expansion based on what the survey says. So I want to get some clarification on that so we understand what we're talking about. It does appear that this is using more of the lot for structures. Would you say that's correct?
Yes and no. I would consider it filling in the blanks, because you have 2 decks right now. I go back to my overlay. It's filling in a sliver. I'm afraid this is gonna fall. Just looking at the meat and bones here, you're filling in this sliver here that's right now non-native vegetation. And then you're expanding this current deck that's kind of skewed off the back of the house just to match this.
Okay.
I wouldn't call that really significant. And I
didn't say it
would,
was significant. I'm just trying to get the facts first. We'll discover those things later.
okay,
It appears that you're expanding the use of this property. Whether it's significant or not is certainly something that can be argued. But I wanted to understand that because this seemed to be in conflict. Now, it also appears that the setback, the current setback to the wetlands, to the swimming pool, is the same as your proposed setback to the edge of the decking of the swimming pool area. In other words, you're staying within the perimeter of what is disturbed right now as part of the swimming pool or the coping. Is that correct?
wait a second. So the patio and the pool deck should be the same setback, essentially.
Okay,
And the pool itself should be at a greater setback than the existing pool because the pool
right.
is
It's-
shrinking,
Right, okay,
right? Is that what you said?
yeah,
Okay,
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 good. I want to get that clear with you. Now, here's my question to you.
okay.
What allowance would you have with your clients to increase the setback to the, I guess, the area around the pool? It's not the pool itself because that's recessed. What is that what do you have right around the pool? Proposed gravel, is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, so that would basically be an area to put some lounge chairs next to the pool.
Okay, so I see I'm looking at the survey, I see a 5-foot maintenance path, and then it says 27 feet to the pool. You don't have a setback number to that corner, but I imagine that's 12 feet.
I think
because that's
it
what it
is.
is right now. We always like to see a greater setback to the wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, it's 12 feet right now, and you're not going any closer. That's the good first step.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the second step is to make that 12 feet bigger. And I know you want to use it for some things there, but what can you do to bring that back to increase the setback, increase the buffer? How much room do you have there? Dig deep.
If I may I?
Sure.
Jared Seligman. I'm also, by the way, I've moonlit as interior designer, and I've worked with landscape architects for many years, as well as numerous conservation boards, and just want to reiterate again my sincere apologies that we're coming to you at this stage. And now that we're here, he's asking how many how much further we could push the pool this way?
He's
No,
asking if
the
there's
pool-
ability to reduce this. to
This was done
increase
for the
this.
minimum, smallest, reduced chair size that we went back multiple times. So this doesn't even fit I mean, this is a luxury problem. I just want, there's people dying in Ukraine right now, but we revised this plan, I think, multiple times to fit the smallest lounge chair that you would fit a normal-sized human to sit at the pool with walking distance that you wouldn't be falling in the pool or falling off the deck, essentially. I think you have like 18 inches of breathing room on each side, which is already an extremely narrow proportioned space. Nothing I would ever present to a client that would be
So
paying
that
me.
distance from pool FE, what does that mean?
Fence.
Pool,
You're looking at the survey, right?
yes.
Yeah, so there's a pool fence on top of that wall.
Okay, pool fence, distance from pool fence to the pool/spa.
Hold on.
It must be about 12 feet. It looks like the same as the distance from the
Yeah.
wetland.
It is exactly 12 feet.
You see, there's an increased utility of a already non-conforming use. And what I'm trying to do is see if there's a way to increase the setback,
Would a reduction
to-
in the length of the pool be something that would make
possibly.
sense?
But see, there's an area there that's not utilized. It's plantings. And you want to utilize it. And I'm not saying you shouldn't utilize it. We're just talking here. I'm trying to see if there's a way to increase the setback to the pool, because that's the closest setback. And the amount that I'm looking for is that increased area that you already marked off of the spaces here on the overlay of the increased use. Is there a way to compensate that, to essentially mitigate that increased use by giving more buffer to the wetlands?
Right. So
See, that way-
I understand what you're
That way, we're
saying.
not increasing the nonconformity of the property.
So part of the concession that we're making by having this as multi-level is that we're also contending with stairs now. So it's not as though it's one smooth level, and then you can put a chair here and not have to worry, contend with, well, I have to walk downstairs and then I have a chair. So you're walking downstairs into chairs that are constrained around a pool. It's kind of, you're
This is, long story short, this is already, honestly, it's worst case for best case. This is not our ideal scenario as is. This is already challenging in every way, shape, and form.
I see that.
So we would have to think.
It's like me trying to get into a medium-sized jacket. It just doesn't fit very well.
You need help, I know. So, I mean, that's why we're here. Just to throw something out here, to reduce the length of the pool even a couple of feet and just move the use back, if that would, that's something we're definitely open to. Other than that, I think it would be really a challenge to, but ultimately, if this is just something, I mean, we're here to just hopefully move on.
Well, I want to get a little discussion here first before you
Yeah.
leave, to give you some directions on what we expect to see next time you come back, and not just wide open. I'm doing the talking. I also need to hear from the other board members to see if they're thinking anything at all like what I'm thinking about. But I'm looking to mitigate that space. You want to increase the utility of that area because it is so highly constrained. And I picked up that as a possibility. You may find something creative to do something a little bit differently. Does that make any sense to you guys?
Just using this is the same as the footprint, we're just changing the use of it, so he's saying we're using the space because.
And I certainly can appreciate you offering to downsize the pool a little.
Thank you.
And this plan, by the way.
It doesn't go unrecognized.
And just so you know, this plan also is we're downsizing the pool from, it's original, right now,
Right now
it's 20 by 40.
Yes.
So, we're really, and Daphne can attest, we're really trying to just do what's best for all. It's a really tricky space. This is not easy. Regarding the pool seating, I can't, it would be very difficult to look at that area. What if we were to just leave out the space that we're filling in? Does that make sense? So right now we have like that weird opening. We're just, basically we have like a 2-story deck with a little sliver.
I'm not
We're
saying
just
you-
going.
Yeah, I'm not saying you shouldn't fill it in. It looks like a very efficient way to use that space.
But to have the pool chairs there hypothetically, which are the only place it would technically be able to fit, if you're suggesting to have a different use of purpose for the lower tier deck, it would really only be able to fit in that space.
You've
So
got proposed bluestone on the other side of the pool, the opposite side of the spa.
those are just stepping stones, not actually like bluestone.
Yeah.
Okay, but do you need to have a walkway all around the pool, or can it end right there?
I think there was a few for compliance for a few things, but yes, to have our pool maintenance person, you need to just have one. It would be extremely, there was quite a few lists, from irrigation to pool maintenance. They said we need to have a walkway, was what they called it. And the reason why we wrote bluestones, we wanted to be very honest, we didn't have to say what stepping stones, but if it was grass or something else, it would be difficult for any maintenance or whatever to not get into the pool. So we just wanted to be as upfront with everything, given our
Yeah.
It's 4
history.
feet. That's a 4-foot walkway, so it's a standard sort of thing. So we've had many hours of
This is-
conversations, many iterations. I can't even tell you how much time we've spent trying to make this something that would be viable to as many entities as possible. It's a difficult lot. And we're trying to utilize the existing space to the best of our ability. There's not really any buffer value by them not filling in that area with the deck. And cutting back that patio is going to be problematic for access and usability.
And we are giving, I mean, I know not to beat a dead horse, but to be very clear, our lawn currently is double this size, if not a little more so. And we're already only using, I think it's 18,250 plus or minus square feet of 40,000. We're already it's pretty limited. And the wetlands, which our real dream is to really, let's say the word, it's in total disrepair. So anything we would be doing would hopefully help not only the habitat, and make it beautiful, but just make everything flow. Like right now, there's some drainage and leakage. We would really, a lot of care went into preserving the landscape and also giving the additional buffer by removing half of already very small lawn.
I mean, we're showing a 5-foot maintenance path around the retaining wall area. I mean, that's something typically that the building department or this board usually looks for. That could be eliminated and be additional buffer, but the 4-foot access around the house would be essential.
With this, I think you always want to keep a maintenance area around. And you're going to need to use that to do something, any repairs or all kinds of things that could happen down the line.
Well, the pool equipment is currently all stored right there. This plan proposes removing
That
all
the
of
other
that
side.
and putting it on the other side of the pool,
Yeah, the pool equipment's practically in the wetlands right now.
literally.
So is there's an area that says proposed pergola, then proposed decking, then proposed gravel. It looks like there's some steps there, so you go down to the proposed gravel.
Yes,
How far down?
it's like a foot.
It was like the one remnant of a design element we tried to keep. It's really insignificant.
Why drop it down? Why not maintain the same?
Because it's two different materials. I mean, our dream was to have a bluestone patio with grass around our pool. Obviously, we can't do either of those. So we tried to come up with some sort of remote, hybrid, something that sort of gave us the illusion of it not just looking like an above-ground deck that sort of was displaced. And we kind of went with the theme and kind of tried to like bring in the nature to it. Also, the proposed gravel was what we all came up with Daphne, and like honestly, we're so grateful for Daphne's help with this and her patience. But that was something that was suggested for the DEC as well as for the environment. But we are open to if the unweathered wood or whatever wood deck continuation is better. That's something we're also open to discussing and able to.
On that side, why not,
God bless you.
why not bring the proposed decking right over to the pool with the same material? Maybe you want gravel on the other side, but on that side, and keep it all at the same level, and use that area between the house and the pool for your chairs, so you can squeeze in the area by the wetland to increase the setback.
Could
Well,
we?
The problem with that is then the pool would need to be elevated an additional foot, and that means
was
more
what it
fill.
was.
So we're minimizing the fill by doing it this way. That was the logic.
The fill to elevate the deck, though, is a wash. Whether you use the fill or not, it's not changing any of the drainage on the property at all, because right now, that area is blocked off from any kind of percolation, any kind of absorption, because that pool goes right down to the groundwater. So bringing that up with more fill doesn't change anything.
Well, our compromise was we reduced it from 8 feet, which is our preference, to 5 feet, so that it is better for like so many. There was a whole list of things I don't want to butcher.
But I'm not
with
saying
it.
go any shallower with the
No,
pool.
no,
Bring the
saying-
top of the pool up too.
Bring it up.
I know, but the reason why we went down, if we were bringing it up and okay with that look of having a elevated pool, we would just have a normal, like at least a 6-foot deep pool. We were doing this so that we could kind of get the deck as low as possible, so that at least we could give the illusion that we didn't have two backyards on two different like continents, so to speak. Like that there was a deck here and then like our yard here, and just really for our dogs, it's the lower so that they can go to the steps was why we wanted it lower, just so. But it's a very small, we're talking like it's not like a.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying, I think if that's a possibility, a compromise that might be amenable to my clients would be the potential for that elimination of that space that's currently between the two decks, because we would no longer need that potentially for the stairs if the pool is at the same level as the deck. You know what I'm saying? So we could eliminate that, I think it's like a 3-foot
I'm just-
area.
I think we should adjourn, but
Yeah.
Squish it.
you understand the way I'm thinking on this.
Yes.
And I think there's ways to do this. I just don't know what they are here. You're more creative than I am.
Well,
But we're trying to get to that place where we're not increasing the nonconformity.
if this whole thing was one leveled wood deck, would that be a sufficient
Well,
thing to
the-
So
consider?
that's an issue, though, a
I
different.
really don't care what the level is.
I understand what you're saying.
What I was suggesting changing the level to accomplish something else, to ultimately increase the setback from the wetlands. If we can increase the setback, that'd be wonderful.
Is there a way to do that?
Yes.
I have a question, and it has to do with this proposed gravel. Have you used this before, Daphne, around the pool?
Yes,
Is it practical?
it is.
Now, I don't know about you, I walk in my driveway, my feet hurt. So, are people going to be walking around this pool on gravel, bringing the gravel into the pool, and not being comfortable? My concern is that something down the road might change there. Concrete, blocks, or something like that.
Right, I understand. Well,
We're well aware that that's not an option. We've And we have been in this board's terrible graces. We want to go into its good graces and stay there. We're not looking to, we didn't buy an old house to knock it down and build new construction. We're here, to be here for a very long time and want to just, move forward. So, noted, we thought of every option possible for walking. Also with grass, there's a lot of issues, which was our aesthetic choice. Even bluestone, it's hot. I mean, honestly, quite frankly, a wood deck is probably the most, logical in every way, shape, and form. We just, I think the DEC, we wanted to come with I think the wording is impervious substance, but.
Well, this is being used to add up the pervious area?
Yes. Gravel. And it would be, there's like a smoother little thing that's more palatable for one's foot, and that's why we wrote bluestone. We would have like individual, just so that the chairs can sit, but not bluestone, if that makes any sense. So that literally,
You might
if
be
Mr.
able-
Shea came over after this was done, we want him to give our blessing and good graces and not come back with any even minute violation of any kind. This is the goal.
The way I calculate it is you got 48 square feet to give to the DEC. And if you move that, if you did some things like you're talking about, Daphne, to increase the setback, then every time you increase the setback a little bit, you're gaining more footage, and you may get enough to be able to put decking there instead of gravel, at least on one side of the pool. That's gonna take some legwork to figure those things out.
Okay.
Marty.
Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town, just some final comments. The applicant has not yet shown why they can't reorient the direction of the pool in the interest of significantly increasing wetland construction setbacks. The relief that they're seeking, 27 feet, I think it is, for the pool, 12 feet for the elevated patio, is unheard of. I can't think of any applications where the board would consider granting that degree of relief. And it's of great concern to me that it appears that some consideration is still being given to allowing for an elevated fill patio. We don't allow that on other applications. If that is allowed here, it's going to open up the door for many applicants to come back to this board that wanted patios elevated on fill, and they were told they either had to build a patio at grade or they had to build an elevated deck. We just had a big application that came before us in Watermill, where they were required to eliminate the elevated patio in the fill and to build a deck. So I think, and I'm hearing a little bit of it, but I think the applicant needs to give serious consideration to construction of decks, to negate the need for the fill. And there are certainly other design options that could be evaluated here, which would significantly increase the wetland setbacks. The applicant is required to maximize setbacks. They have not done that. And what I'm only hearing is some consideration of very minor changes to the plan. I think the applicant needs to look to see if the pool direction can be reoriented, to see if the size of the pool can be reduced. The extent of deck and patio, it's excessive for this piece. The whole scope of the project needs to be reduced. If a project of this size, and we're talking accessory improvements, we're talking luxuries, we're talking amenities. If this type of relief is granted for luxuries on a property like this, it's going to set a very bad precedent for other applications, for the many applications that my office is reviewing, and that is of great concern to me. So I would strongly encourage the applicant to continue to evaluate design options that will increase the buffer and increase the wetland building setbacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Just, if I'm not I just would like to have some clarification. Right now, their setback for the pool is 27 feet,
Yes,
and your drawing, Marty, gives a setback of 30 feet to the deck and 42 feet to the pool.
That's correct.
So is that what you're looking for, the more separation for the pool?
For both. As you know, the board requires that setbacks be absolutely maximized for pools. We're looking at a 27-foot setback. That is not maximum.
I would argue that this is setting a precedent, because are there people that have existing pools like this that are asking for the same thing? I don't know. I don't know what the situation is, but if this was a new circumstance, there's no way we would ever propose this. We would probably not even come in with the pool, because the ability to gain a 100-foot setback is not even feasible here. The only reason I would advise my client to come in with a pool here is because they already have a pool, and they should be entitled to replace their existing swimming pool. Otherwise, to me, this is a property that, if it was vacant, we probably shouldn't be proposing a new pool. It's replacement of an existing structure that's been here for 40 years. And, what's that?
May I ask one question?
Yeah.
Isn't it less, sorry, Jared Seligman, owner, I would just assume, just based on common sense, and it could be just my ignorance, that it would be less noticeable and less worrisome to set a precedent for basically just taking a pool, shrinking it, both in its length, width, and depth, and replacing a structure and just adding a wood deck, as opposed to completely changing the position of the pool and totally like messing up the structure, would be much less noticeable and worrisome to set a precedent, as opposed to just you allowed us to reduce our pool slightly and fix the deck, basically, because our deck is not even safe right now. So I just would think that it would be much less noticeable and palatable for whatever. So that was just my.
We'll work on it.
When do you want to come back?
You guys are going away.
We don't, this is our number one priority.
As soon as possible.
We don't have anything on the agenda for April 27th right now. We do have 3 on for April 13th. We do April 27th?
Gives us time.
Is there any chance to do sooner? This is just been going on.
The 13th?
Yeah.
We do have 3 on right now.
In
2
one
of
of
them,
those applications, the hearing could be very lengthy, the George Howe application, if they go forward.
okay. So they adjourned in December. Why they adjourned in December? They
Which
adjourned
one
for-
are you asking about?
The Jeffrey Howell, he adjourned in December 22nd for 3.5 months. That's unusual.
They have a very difficult property, and working with a large team of architects and design professionals, and they said it's going to take them that much time.
Okay. Have you heard anything from him since?
No. Just that they need that additional time. So,
Yeah.
no, they haven't resubmitted yet. No. There's a possibility they could request another adjournment, but they
Yeah.
requested 2 already, so.
Yeah.
Really long night.
The 27th is
Thank you. This is the frustrating thing, because we could very well have time on the 13th, but we just don't know.
The only date I know I had something confirmed was the 27th, but I would gladly rearrange it. Literally, it's Murphy's Law. It's every-
Yeah.
Boy.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We have a motion.
Yep. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Did you make the motion?
Yes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. See you
You guys.
in a month.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Good night.
And thank you. Bye, Daphne.
Good night, Daphne.
You too.
Advisory reports, David and Robin Santora.
Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. The David and Robin Santora property is a final subdivision. The property is located at 26 Homestead Avenue in Quag. The board had reviewed this application previously and had made some comments. This advisory report is reiteration of those comments. One, it's indication that the property is located within the town's high priority water quality improvement zone, and as such, any new residential construction or substantial expansion of the existing dwelling needs to be subject to IA or WTS installation, and then notice of such should be added to the subdivision plat. Third comment, again, as previously, makes a planning board aware that the property contains woodlands and that there should be an effort, despite some existing disturbance, to preserve some of those woodlands. The recommendation is for a minimal buffer in the back portion of the lot to provide some screening for neighboring housing, and that the existing brush and debris needs to be removed from that area, and the area needs to be allowed to recover naturally.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Marty,
Planning board,
yes, planning board.
not ZBA.
Oh, sorry.
Should I be signing these, or is that going to be?
You don't need to sign.
Okay, thank you. For the planning board, 69 Cypress Avenue subdivision.
Yeah, and sorry for the poor copy. None of the copying machines were working downstairs today, so that created some issues.
I thought it was my
This-
glasses.
Oh my gosh, me too. I
This
thought it was
relates to property in the hamlet of Flanders. It's a subdivision in the pre-application stage. The first characterizes the subdivision, indicates that the applicant is looking to subdivide one lot into two lots. Property is not in the jurisdiction of town regulated wetlands, but is within the town's medium priority water quality improvement zone, as well as in the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. The second comment indicates that the plans would conform to the clearance restrictions as set forth in section 330-67A. Thirdly, there is notice that there are trees of a significant size on this property, and there is a recommendation that a conservation easement be established 20 feet south of the northerly lot line at proposed Lot 2 in order to establish the more mature trees. And the last comment is really a commendation that the subdivision map is indicating that a new IA OWTS will be installed to service the existing dwelling, and that the new dwelling on Lot 2 will also have an IA OWTS consistent with recommendations that are routinely provided by this board.
Motion to send the comments to the planning board?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And for the ZBA, Adios Holdings LLC.
This is a vacant lot on Bay Bluff Way in Noyak. Bay Bluff Way is a road end at a Bay Bluff. The first comment is indicating that the property has frontage on Little Peconic Bay, but that it does have at least 100 linear feet of functional bulkhead, thereby limiting the town's wetland permitting jurisdiction to 50 feet landward of surface waters. Second comment provides some history. It notes that this board had issued a prior permit, 2018, in order to rectify unauthorized tree cutting and topping, which was occurring on the bluff face. We had required and approved a native revegetation plan. Even though the demolition of the prior dwelling and plans for a new home were outside of this board's jurisdiction. However, the landowner never followed through with completing the required restoration. Nonetheless, when I inspected the property recently, I found that the bluff face is naturally reforesting to locust trees, so there's no longer a need for active revegetation on the bluff. The fourth comment indicates that the plans that were submitted to the zoning board are substantially different from the plans that were previously reviewed by this board, and while the construction may be outside of this board's jurisdiction, it's unclear as to whether or not the associated site disturbance requires a wetlands permit. And then there's an indication of the existence of a recorded covenant that encumbers the property. Notwithstanding the reforestation of those impacted areas, I did notice some remnant irrigation lines, discharge pipes that are protruding from the bluff face, which yet need to be removed. The last comment simply indicates that we haven't considered or commented on the variance issuance standards as set forth in the town building and zoning code. Rather, these comments focus on the authority of the board with regards to affected wetlands.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Stefan and Maria Siciliano.
This is property on Bay Avenue in the hamlet of Noyak. It's property that is within the jurisdiction of town and state regulated wetlands. We recently issued a revised administrative wetland permit to allow for a one-story addition and balcony. The revisions had to be made because the square footage calculations that were initially provided to us were in error and needed to be corrected. And the third comment indicates that the survey that has been submitted to the zoning board is consistent with that revised permit. And lastly, we indicate that we have not looked at the individual variance issue and standards that look at other criteria outside of the purview of this board.
Motion is to come to the ZBA?
Second?
All in favor?
Sorry, can I just get those votes again?
Sure.
So, Sunshine, you made the motion on this, and you
Yep.
second that.
Actually, for the past 2 or 3 hours.
Adios Holdings, the prior one, do you?
Same one.
That was,
Okay. And 69 Cypress Avenue,
that was George.
Jerry,
I did, yeah.
Yep, George
and
and
who
Jerry.
seconded it?
Jerry. Yep.
You did?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
Yep, it was George.
Must have been
Yep,
George.
Yep.
But
George
George.
for that one.
And then David and Robin Santoro, I'm
that
sorry.
was, I screwed that up, so it was me.
So you made the motion?
Yeah,
Okay.
And I think
the
I
wrong
seconded
board.
that one.
You think you made the second?
I think I
Yeah.
seconded.
All right, thank you, Sunshine. Sorry.
That's right, yep.
Since I was up there.
All right, the administrative wetland permits are in your packets. Decision on A021034, and the applicant requests an adjournment till April, the next meeting.
Yeah, it's actually a postponement. We did get a letter from the applicant's attorney requesting a postponement for the next meeting.
Motion to postpone till next meeting?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And resolution and conditional approval. A021088, Anthony Guerra and Lisa Guerra. Any discussion?
Move to issue?
Second,
Resolve that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Anthony Guerra and Lisa Guerra for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions of the board. All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? A021106, VB Slice of Paradise LLC. Any discussion?
Move to issue?
Second,
Resolve that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to VB Slice of Paradise LLC for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? A022001, Thomas Crowley and Julia Crowley. Any discussion?
Move to issue?
Second?
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Thomas Crowley and Julia Crowley for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? A022009, John Foley. Any discussion?
Move to issue?
Second,
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to John Foley for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Opposed? Preliminary review of secret determination, A021076, Nicholas and Penelope Christopher. The applicant requests postponed to April 13th, 2022.
Motion to postpone to April 13th, 2022.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A021063, Timothy Godbold.
Marty Shagan, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. This application relates to an existing residentially developed property on Millstone Brook Road in the hamlet of Tuckahoe. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated March 23, 2022. The property is characterized by a small home at a higher elevation than a depressed area of red maple swamp along the road. The applicant had received notice of violation as he had commenced reconstruction and reconfiguration of front entry decks and had initiated other improvements on the property without the requisite wetland permits. So this application had to be made in order to legalize construction that has occurred at the property, as well as to gain approval for additional hardscape and accessory improvements at the property. I've spent a lot of time with the applicant, educating him with regards to the value of the existing wetlands and the need to establish a buffer. As a consequence, he has agreed to a plan that covenants all on-site wetlands. This is a wetland preservation area and takes in the entirety of the sloping ground from his house to the wetlands as a covenanted, naturally vegetated wetland, non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer. There are some minor disturbance areas where, at my direction, he has already installed quite a number of native ferns. He is, among other improvements to the property, he is proposing a hot tub, but it's on the far and opposite side of the existing residence, and all the other improvements are relatively minor and not of that much consequence in terms of impacts. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Actually, I'm supposed to read the resolution. So before I say all in favor, resolve that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8E of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A021091, Kidd Construction Company, Inc.
This is a plan for demolition and reconstruction of a single-family residence on a property on the west side of Lumber Lane in hamlet of Bridge, Hampton. The property lies within 200 feet of a constructed drainage area that supports wetland vegetation and provides habitat for migrating waterfowl, wading birds, and potentially endangered tiger salamander. The application had been received a while ago, but it was incomplete. While we were waiting on revised plans, I re-inspected the property and found that they had constructed a network of treated retaining walls with the idea that they were going to bring significant amounts of fill to the property. None of that was proposed as part of the application. I required that all those retaining walls be taken out. They have been dismantled. The debris simply needs to be taken off-site. The remainder of the project is not of great concern, so long as they don't entertain any additional significant grade modifications in this area. They're proposing not only a new residence, but a swimming pool, various accessory structures, all far in excess of the required wetland construction setbacks. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive hearing?
Second?
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8E of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion adjourned?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Nobody ever opposes that, huh?
Not technical.
Notable.
Right.